I used to think my dad was the kind of man who'd protect me from anything. He wore a badge, carried a gun, and had this quiet authority like he always knew what to do. But when I turned 17, I realized he didn't always use that power to protect. Sometimes he used it to manipulate. Let me take you back just 1 year ago. My name's Zoe. I lived with my dad ever since my mum disappeared. That's the word he always used. Disappeared. Not died, not ran away, just gone. He was a detective with the local police, high-ranking. People respected him. But at home, he was distant. He wasn't cruel, just cold. He never talked about Mum, never smiled, never hugged me. I learned not to ask questions. That all changed the day I came home from school and found him waiting in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee, one for him and one for me. We hadn't shared a drink together in years. He sat down slowly and said, "Zoe, I need your help with a case." At first I thought he was joking. Me? Help him? I wasn't some genius hacker or undercover agent. I was just a teenager trying to survive high school. But he leaned in, and I could tell he was serious. This case is personal," he said. "The suspect knows how to avoid surveillance. He's only ever seen in public with girls your age. We need someone inside." I froze. "You want me to be bait?" He looked at me hard, like he was weighing something. Then he said, "It's dangerous, but you'd never be alone. I'd be watching the whole time." I didn't know what to say. I wanted him to trust me. I wanted to matter to him. So I said yes. That night I sat on my bed, reading the case file. The suspect's name was Vincent Lauer, age 40, former teacher. He'd been connected to the disappearances of 3 teenage girls, but never arrested, never caught on camera, always vanished like smoke. Dad had photos, notes, maps. I saw one detail that made my heart stop. One of the missing girls had the same necklace I'd seen in old photos of my mum. "Dad," I asked the next day, "was Mum ever involved in one of your cases?" He paused for a beat, too long. Then said, "No, this is different." But his eyes didn't match his voice. Something was wrong. The first meeting was set at a small cafe downtown. I sat by the window, nervously stirring a cup of cocoa I didn't even want. I wore a short jacket and a scarf that kept slipping off my neck. In my ear, I had a tiny earpiece. My dad's voice came through every 10 seconds. "I'm here. You're safe. Just stay calm." But I didn't feel safe. I felt like bait. And then he walked in, tall, well-dressed, with a warm voice that didn't match his cold eyes. He sat down across from me. "You must be Zoe." I nodded, heart thumping in my chest like a warning bell. Dad whispered again, "You're doing great. Keep going. We're watching." The man introduced himself as Vince. He smiled a lot too much, and he kept watching my face like he already knew me. His voice, it was familiar, like a half-remembered nightmare. We met 2 more times after that. Always in public, always with Dad on the line. Every second I felt like I was walking a tightrope and no one would catch me if I fell. But the 3rd time, something changed. I went to the cafe, sat in our usual spot. But there was no voice in my ear. No check-in, no, "You're safe." I called Dad, straight to voicemail. I texted. No answer. And Vince didn't show either. I waited an hour, then 2. Something felt wrong. I didn't go home. I went straight to the police station. I told the officer I wanted to check a name. I gave them Vince's full name, the one Dad said matched an old cold case. The officer typed it in, then gave me a strange look. Where did you hear that name? My dad, Detective Callahan. He's working the case, I answered quickly. But the officer's face went pale. Sweetheart, your dad retired 2 years ago. He hasn't had a badge since... I froze. What are you talking about? He has a whole case board in our basement. The officer interrupted. That board? We cleared it out 2 years ago. He took it with him after he had an episode. My hands were shaking. An episode? PTSD, delusions. They let him go after he broke down during an interrogation. You didn't know. My world started spinning. If Dad wasn't on a case, if Vince wasn't real, then what the hell was I being used for? I got home without even taking my jacket off. My head was spinning. Dad was sitting at his board again, red strings, photos, notes everywhere. Obsessive, frantic. I stood in the doorway and asked, "Why didn't you answer my calls?" He turned, eyes red and tired. "What happened?" he asked calmly. "The police. They said you haven't worked there in 2 years, that you had some kind of breakdown." He didn't answer at first, then whispered, "I couldn't let the case go. I made a promise." I didn't recognize him anymore. This wasn't my dad. It was someone broken, lost. That night I went into the basement, where everything had started, where I knew it had to end. I turned on the old surveillance monitor. Dad said it recorded everything, all our missions. And then I saw something. I saw myself, sitting alone in the coffee shop, laughing, talking to no one. There was no Vince. There never was. It was all in my head, all worse planted by him. And then I saw another video. Dad in the basement, talking to the camera, saying my name. She needs to believe, because without her, I have no one. My blood ran cold. Everything, the puzzles, the traps, the investigations, he'd made me believe it was real, but it was all a setup. I was his last case, and I never even knew I was the victim, and I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept replaying video after video, hours of footage. The hidden basement camera showed everything, my dad talking to himself, me following missions, but I was always alone. There was no Vince, no handler, no assignment. It was all a story. He had written a movie and made me live in it. At 4 a.m., I finally called Aunt Joanna. "I need help. Please, it's urgent." She was at our house within an hour. I led her straight to the basement. Didn't say a word. She watched the screens, the videos, the files. And she just stared at me. This is paranoia, delusion. This is dangerous. Then she looked me dead in the eyes. Her voice was shaking. "He made you believe all this was real?" I nodded, my throat clenched up. Tears welled in my eyes again, and I trusted him. He was my dad. She immediately made 2 calls, one to the police, one to psychiatric services. We waited. I stood there, shaking, feeling like the house was caving in. Every wall was fake, every memory suspicious. I had lived in a film set, and I was the only one who didn't know it was fiction. When they came, Dad didn't fight. He just stood there, calm, still in uniform, like it was part of the mission. He looked at me and whispered, "Stay sharp, baby girl. You did good. We'll finish this soon." Then they handcuffed him. He went peacefully. I found out later. He hadn't worked for the police in months. They'd let him go due to mental instability, but he kept the uniform. He'd falsified IDs, created fake emails, even left staged packages outside the house to make the mission feel real. He wasn't protecting me. He was using me to protect himself from the truth. I started therapy the next week. I couldn't even look in a mirror without wondering, who am I without his voice in my head? I couldn't trust anything. I'd look at neighbors and wonder, are they real? Were they watching me? I'd go to school and flinch every time someone said FBI or cop. It was like my brain had been rewritten. One day in therapy, my doctor asked, "What was the hardest part for you?" I didn't even have to think. It wasn't being lied to. It wasn't the missions or the fear or even being used. I looked her in the eyes. It was the fact that I wanted to believe him. Because I missed him. Because I loved the version of him I thought he was. Months passed. My dad was placed in a psychiatric facility, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. The court ruled he was unfit to stand trial. But I was still left with the consequences. The headline said, "Former officer creates elaborate FBI fantasy involving own daughter." People stared at me like I was contagious, like I had some invisible madness clinging to me. Aunt Joanna let me live with her. She helped me rebuild, helped me find truth again. Not the truth my dad fed me, but real truth, the kind that doesn't come with secret codes and burner phones. A year later, I visited him. I didn't want to, but I needed to. He sat behind the glass, smiling, calm. "Hey, sweetheart, you staying low? They still watching the house?" I froze. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry. But instead, I whispered, "No, Dad, they're not watching." Because there's no one there. There never was. He blinked. Something in his eyes flickered. But he just nodded. "That's good. That's very good. You're learning." I walked out, and I didn't look back. I'm older now, stronger. I still have scars moments when shadows feel like cameras, when kindness feels suspicious. But I'm healing. I'm learning that love isn't about control. That trust is earned, not forced. That truth doesn't whisper in riddles, it speaks plainly. My dad made me believe in lies. But now I believe in myself.